Welcome back to Blankenship Field. Dobyns-Bennett, third down, 3 yards to go. Whitson at the 10-yard line. Man comes in motion. Whitson will run it. Cuts up the field, first down, runs into his own man, but he moves the ball across the 15-yard line. Wildcats facing a really good Dobyns-Bennett team, and that's a kind of a jab in the heart right there. We're getting that first down. If they really had any chance of coming back, they really needed to stop there, and they needed to score on the previous drive, and just not executing as well as they can. I know Coach Gaddis and the staff will go back to the drawing board. You got to give a lot of credit once again to Coach Miner's defense, though. They did their job. I mean, really, the offense they just couldn't get it done here, and the defense is getting tired for sure.
Yeah, and they've done it really well all night long as Kingsport's about to snap.
First and 10. Handoff goes to the back, and Jacob Bourbon makes a stop at around the 17-yard line. Also there on the play for the Wildcats looks like one other. It looks like Kai Hirsch. Kai's playing a lot of ball tonight because with the injured Trey Rowe. Yeah,
and he's played actually really well. He did a really good job on the previous drive of tackling the quarterback, or I believe it was maybe even Tesner there. David, you said this is a really good Dobyns-Bennett team. Maybe one of the best ones. I can think back to maybe Malik Foreman, or I believe they had a player by the name of Swafford. He was really good.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the best ones we've seen for sure. Quarterback's very poised. They've got running backs. They've got good receivers. And the line is great. Second down, 4 yards to go. 4.5 minutes to play in the ball game. Quarterback's going to hand it off, and he's got good running room again up to the 30-yard line. That is another first down. The Wildcats dead tired on defense here, just dead tired. They lost one of their starters to start the ball game, Trey Rowe, right in their early part of the game. Kind of banged up his shoulder a little bit. And you're right, Kai's played well, but, depth, they just haven't been able to build that depth yet.
Yeah, David, and we even saw earlier in the game where Ethan Hewitt was playing for the Wildcats. Maybe one of the best defensive linemen, like you said, Coach Gaddis said, but we need him on offense as well.
4 minutes to play in the ball game. First down, 10 yards to go for Kingsport. You wouldn't expect them to put the ball in the air any here. They lead 19-3. Although, here comes the pass, and it's incomplete. That helps. Stops the clock, but there's only 3 minutes and 48 seconds to play in the ball game. Oak Ridge student section, Guy Loco provided the tickets for them, and they came in big numbers, and they're all still here. I think they probably just really enjoyed that rainstorm.
Yeah, everybody else headed to their cars. Most everybody else did, but the students, they just love being out in that and having a great time. I think it's tropical or bathing suit night, so especially what a perfect weather for that, I guess.
Second down, 10 yards to go, 19-3. Dobyns-Bennett headed for their second consecutive victory over the Wildcats. A little closer this year, but Wildcats failed to get a touchdown in this one. 19-3. Play clock down to 6 seconds. Handoff goes to the back, and he doesn't get much. He's still spinning forward. He's initially hit by Kai Hirsch. As I mentioned this earlier, and obviously Cole's playing safety. I haven't called his name out much. It'll be third down, 8 yards to go. The stop is made by J.K. Morgan, Joseph Morgan. His dad played in the 80s. Coach Gaddis back in the day. Down to 3:20 to play. We'll be speaking to the head coach of the Wildcats, Coach Joe Gaddis, after the ball game. 3:14 to play. Third down, 8 yards to go. Wildcats down 19-3. I've said this all night, but I mean it again. They got to get a stop on this play. I mean, dead in the water if they can't get a stop. Handoff goes to the back, and they're going to get that stop. He's still driving. Brian Kelly and company try to make the stop right at the 40-yard line. It's a gain of about 4. It's fourth down. And with 2:55 to play, the play is halted. A timeout is asked for by Oak Ridge. We'll take it with them. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Manning in punt formation for the Kingsport Dobyns-Bennett Indians. 2:54 to play. Here it is. High, spiraling kick. Best punt of the night, angling to the sidelines. Wildcats will have 2 minutes and 45 seconds to play in this game. Down 16, 19-3 the score. Our next broadcast of Oak Ridge High School football will be coming up next Friday. Hopefully on Friday, the Wildcats, as we do have it'll be Oak Ridge and Campbell County in a region ball game. Public address announcer has just announced that they don't want people to go on the field after the game, and because of what we're going through as a country and as a world, actually, they just want everyone to stay distant.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, that's one of the best things about being in high school and being in the student section.
First and 10, Oak Ridge. Snap fallen upon by Oak Ridge's Mitchell Gibbons. 2:42 to play, and the rain starts to fall here once again. It's kind of fitting as this one's closing out here. 2 minutes, 34 seconds to play. Wildcats down 19-3. All the credit in the world to Dobyns-Bennett. I mean, I cannot say. Oak Ridge didn't play as well as they could. Didn't execute some certain things. Some penalties hurt them. Didn't make plays when they needed to. But all the credit in the world goes to Dobyns-Bennett.
Yeah, and they have a really good team, really well-rounded offensive, defensive, and special teams-wise.
Mitchell's second yards to go. Going to go deep down the way. Pass is there. It's going to be incomplete. Boy, a big hit. Wildcat intended receiver was Jalen Hayward. Good defense and a good hit on Jalen. He's okay, though. Pass broken up. Third down, 10 yards to go. Cody makes a big play for the Indians.
Yeah, and he's a really good player for them. He's been kind of all over the field, targeted a lot tonight, especially against Jonathan Stewart on those routes. And Wildcats just trying to get something going, especially late in the game here with being down 2 scores. 19-3
our score, 2:05 to play. Wildcats of Oak Ridge and the Kingsport Dobyns-Bennett Indians, longtime rivals, as we've said. Blake and Lee Wexler are statisticians, our camera people today. Here's a quick pass out to Preston Turner. Pass is going to be incomplete. It'll bring up 4th down and 10. Minute 58 to play. The Wildcats just trying to get something going, but Dobyns-Bennett just will not allow it.
No, and it's credit their defense. We've really not been able to move them very much. Mitchell hasn't had a lot of time. Their defensive line is very aggressive. Receivers and defensive backs have been battling all night long. Kendall not being able to get much going either hasn't helped.
So it's 4th down, 10 yards to go. Obviously, the Wildcats will go for it. Down 19-3. I think Kingsport will probably, if they get the ball back, they won't try to do much. As Mitchell's going to go deep down the field, passes up for grabs, incomplete. At the 50-yard line, intended for Jonathan Stewart, and they'll take over on downs, and they got great field position at the Oak Ridge 26-yard line. The Indian fans sensing victory here. The Wildcats just struggled all night to find some offense. Same thing happened when we were up in Kingsport last year.
Yeah, David, and a lot of credit to them, and they will be, hopefully probably having a really good season. And I think maybe their biggest contender may be Maryville, as you mentioned.
Here comes Dobyns-Bennett back out on the field. Let's see how aggressive they are on offense. The rivalry is a good one. It's a classy one. I wouldn't expect them to put it in the air here. I would expect them probably just take a couple knees here, and I think they're in the victory formation. They will take a knee. That is Kingsport and Oak Ridge personified. That is the class of this rivalry. They're just taking a knee when they can take it in for another score.
Yeah, David, and they're shaking hands, and this is a rivalry, very hotly contested rivalry. A lot of respect for both sides, both cities. We love going up there and eating pals. They love coming down here and eating big guys on these games. Makes it something special.
Minute 24 to play in the ball game. The Wildcats, it'll be for Dobyns-Bennett. 2nd down, 10 yards to go. Probably 2 more plays and we'll be done. They're letting the clock tick down. Oak Ridge is not going to use their timeouts. Down 16, 19-3. Wildcats will have lost to Dobyns-Bennett 2 years in a row. There's the knee once again. Play clock is set. A minute to play here. We might have to play 2 more plays here. 59 seconds to play. They haven't reset the play clock. There it goes. We'll have to play 2 here. 3rd down and 10 yards to go. So back to the drawing board go the Wildcats here. They got to get ready for Campbell County. honestly, although you want to win a game like Dobyns-Bennett, the games that really matter are the region ball games. And the first one's coming up on Friday against Campbell County. Got to win those if you're looking towards the playoffs.
Yeah, David, region games are important. Campbell County is going to be very important. Karns is going to be important. Clinton, obviously, another big rivalry game. West, who's really, really competitive this year, and I believe was last up on Farragut. And Powell's going to return a lot of players from last year as well. So very competitive season for the Wildcats.
That's the final play of the ball game. The two teams strolling out down to 8 seconds. The Dobyns-Bennett Indians are in a straight line at the 50-yard line. Wildcats have been told not to shake hands. I'm not exactly sure if that's what Oak Ridge will do. The Wildcats waved at Hardin Valley. The game is over. 19-3 is your final score. Tough game for the Wildcats. A lot of football to be played, hopefully, James Branson.
Yeah, David, and I think you take more out of this game than you lost out of it. Obviously, you hate to lose games, but what you took out of this is you know that your defense can play well and can play with really good 6A teams. Offensively, we got to be able to move the football, and I think Coach Gaddis and his staff will be able to make those improvements to be able to do so.
19-3 is the final score. Why don't we take a break? We'll send it back to Brian Bennett at the station. Two teams are still out at the center of the field, social distancing. They want to shake hands because it was a well-played game. It was a very classy ball game, but they're just not able to do so. Final score, Dobyns-Bennett wins at 19-3. We'll be back to Blankenship Field in 3 minutes.
Welcome back to Blankenship Field. Alex Myers now joining the crew. It's like old time's sake up here in the booth with Mike Sheehan. Mike, you've been keeping stats. You've been doing stuff for us for years and years, decades, I guess now. Not many, I heard you comment, not many games where you've seen a downpour here at Blankenship quite like we saw there early in the third quarter.
You know, Alec, I played 6 games in the rain my senior year, but I have never seen it rain as hard as it did in the third quarter of this ball game. You, just like David and James were talking about, you could hardly see the field. It was raining so hard, and it really wasn't detrimental. Thank goodness there wasn't any lightning, no stand downs today. That was a good part. And how wonderful is it to have an artificial field? Alec, this is my first game since that I've been on this field, and since it's turned to artificial turf, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Well, and like you said, that's one advantage at times. And, it was almost sitting in the press box, unlike people on the field or in the stands, we've got a little bit higher advantage from our viewpoint. And it was almost like sheets. And, Mike, to an offense that struggled last year, the last couple times these teams have played, and an offense that struggled here again tonight, do you think that had any effect or no? I mean, they didn't score in the second half, but then again, their offense really wasn't great in the first half. What do you think?
Oh, it's definitely affected. I mean, a wet football is something kind of hard to hold on to. And, for whatever reason, our receivers had a rough night. They dropped an awful lot of balls. Some of them, I thought they should have caught. But that happens. It's high school football. And we're going to get better. And this Kingsport team very much impressed me. They are very talented. Their running back and their quarterback and their defense played lights out tonight. We just couldn't get anything going.
Especially for an offense that did so well against Hardin Valley. Now, obviously, this team's a little bit of a step up in competition. Coaches knew that. Players knew that. Quite frankly, the fans knew that. But it's still a little bit of the opposite of effect of what we saw last week. Now, Mike, we're getting ready to send it down. If you're listening on radio, we're getting ready to send it down to James Branson, who's going to have an interview with Coach Gaddis. But while we're waiting on those two to get together, I want to ask you something. It seems like every year with Coach Gaddis, you get a couple of these really tough games at the beginning of the year. Some of them you win, some of them you don't. You'd like to win them all, but even in the games that Oak Ridge has lost, it seems like week 3, week 4, that late early part of the season under Coach Gaddis, when you have a game like this, that the Wildcats tend to come out very, very strong the following week. So you expect that again?
Yes, I do. I look for them to come back next week against Campbell County. And, I look for us to put a hurt on Campbell County. We're a much more talented team than they are. These guys are super disappointed. You can tell by the way they're walking up the step with their heads down. They're not happy with what happened tonight. They gave it their all. They just played a great team. And, I think the weather was a factor. So we'll see next week here with Campbell County coming home. One good thing about this, this is not a regional ball game. It doesn't really hurt us as far as standings go. I mean, it's a pride thing, and we'll come back and we'll get better. And I look for this team to do well the rest of this year.
I think I speak on behalf of probably you, myself, and most Wildcat fans as we say, I'm just glad that this rivalry is back. It's a tradition. Usually you used to see these in the playoffs against each other, but even though it's just regular season, it's still great to see. Obviously, the colors are very similar. The tradition and multiple sports goes back. Real quick, while we're waiting on Coach Gaddis to get to James Branson for our interview, I want to ask you, Mike, as an offensive lineman, obviously Oak Ridge prides himself on running the ball under Coach Gaddis. Kendall Jackson, one of the more talented players, higher regarded players on the team, he didn't really ever get going tonight, and that showed on the scoreboard. It also showed when the weather got rainy, they still weren't able to do that. As an offensive lineman, what does Oak Ridge need to do up front in the trenches in order to get that running game going next week?
Well, for one thing, they were outsized tonight, which they weren't last week against Hardin Valley. They ran up against a brick wall at times, and it seemed like for whatever reason, and even David Clary alluded to this fact, that Kingsport seemed to come out a little bit more fired up than we did, especially in the first half of the game. As they jumped out to a 7-3 lead, which is not a big lead, but they just kept their intensity. When they came out into the third quarter and scored again, it just seemed like the momentum shifted toward Kingsport. The linemen, they're just going to have to get their pads leverage down. They're going to have to do a little bit better job blocking, and really and truly on defense, we're just going to have to tackle better.
Yeah, there's several missed tackles, and you can potentially blame that a little bit on the wet surface on the ground. It's harder to tackle, obviously, when it's harder to grab. But Dobyns-Bennett obviously was able to do that a little bit better than Oak Ridge tonight. The last thing before we toss it down is Coach Gaddis looks like he's getting ready to meet up with Coach Branson. Is if you're an offensive lineman like you were, a leader on the team, a lot of times the offensive linemen and defensive linemen, those big guys aren't necessarily the vocal leaders, but maybe they lead by example. What would you say to a lineman that maybe if they've got to step their game up vocally perhaps, what would you advise them as far as getting their team fired up and maybe a little, maybe a little more antsy before the game starts next week?
Well, you have to get fired up, and you have to do a little rah-rah sometimes, run over and hit your fellow players on the shoulder pads and give them a little boost, holler at them, give them some encouragement. That encouragement and positive attitude is everything. You can't get down just because things aren't going your way all the time. You can change that momentum by changing your attitude and getting in there and just giving it all you got.
Thank you so much. That's Mike Sheehan. Again, this is Alex Myers in the broadcast booth at Jack Armstrong Stadium, Blankenship Field. We're going to send it now to Coach Gaddis and James Branson. James
Branson down here on the field with head coach Joe Gaddis. Coach, obviously not the result that you wanted to come away with tonight, but I think, like you mentioned to your players, you had a lot to gain from this defensively. You defense played really hard. That's probably one of the best teams you're going to play this year.
Well, I think it's going to be one of the best teams for sure. They have a heck of a football team. I thought their defense is really good, really aggressive. Offensively, running back's a really hard runner. Quarterback did a good job tonight. They're a heck of a football team. I think they'll win a lot of games. I thought for us to win the game, we had to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Nobody's going to come in and just whip them on both sides of the ball up front, but we need to hold our own. And I thought our defensive front did, our offensive front did not. Their defensive front was more aggressive and more effective than our offensive front was. Kendall Jackson was hitting the backfield numerous times before he could ever get going. We had, even at that, we were in the game till the end. We had a couple of passes that, one time I thought we broke off a route and didn't run the full route. We had a touchdown down here, and then over here we dropped a touchdown. And, those two things, if we catch those, then we're in the game, possibly in position to tie or win it, and still didn't play all that well offensively. But we have that capability just with our wide receivers and so forth, to be able to get them the ball. And Kendall, we just didn't do enough offensively. Consistency was not good at all.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that down here in the corner route, you had Jaden Williams on a corner route. You also had, I think at one point, Jonathan Stewart right there, and Jonathan Stewart down on that side as well. Mitchell Gibbons had himself a pretty good game, threw the ball pretty well and ran it pretty well when he got the opportunity to do so.
He had some good runs for sure, and he threw some balls that should obviously have been caught. Again, it was mostly their aggressive front on defense that caused us the most problems.
And I think one person that also stood out was Jalen Hayward. He had a nice return, which set you up in really good position. Defensively, I think he was the one that had the interception for your defense, and your defense played really well, and I think Coach Miner and your defense were really prepared for that.
He had the pick, and he had a couple of good kickoff returns for sure. He's dangerous in that open field kind of situation.
So, Coach, you mentioned to your players that this one doesn't really hurt us, and I think you even said, other than your feelings, it really doesn't hurt you other than overall record. This is not a region game, but it's something you can learn and take from it. And as we go into region play next week with Campbell County,
I'd much rather learn from a win, but in this case, you got to learn from a loss. It doesn't hurt us in terms of the region for sure. I don't think it'll hurt us down the road. We need to win next week. It happens to be Campbell County. More importantly, it's a region game we've got to have. And, our region is tough, and we've got to beat Campbell County next week. At the same time, we've got to shore up some things on the offensive side to make sure this doesn't happen again. And defensively, I'm not saying we played perfectly or great. I thought we played good on defense, good enough to win, but we've got a lot of things we can correct on the defensive side as well. So we just need to come out next week and be a much better football team than we were tonight.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing that was most impressive. You had 2 stops inside the red zone there, which was really, really impressive.
Well, that was, and we've done that, 2 weeks in a row now. And, our defense is going to be fine. Offensively, we've got to be fine. And like I said, I don't know that we'll face a better defense than this, maybe. But, we should have done much more than we did tonight, no matter the DB defense or not.
Coach, thanks for visiting with us, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you.
David, we will take a 3-minute break, and we will be back to close out our coverage tonight in our broadcast. So after this 3-minute break, we will finish out.
Thank you, James.
Taking a 3-minute break.